Hello and welcome to episode 3 of GameCube Prison, a retrospective series in which we look back at the best games exclusive to Nintendo's peculiar but cool GameCube console. I'm joined today by Anthony John Agnello, our senior social editor.
Is there somebody there?
Hello, everybody!
And I'm, of course, Ludwig Kitzman, and I'm the US editor-in-chief for Games Radar, which means I get to pick the games, and this week I picked Metal Gear Solid: The Twin Snakes, which was published by Nintendo and developed by Silicon Knights.
Nintendo didn't just collaborate with Konami and Hideo Kojima's Kojima Productions on the Twin Snakes, they also collaborated with Silicon Knights, who had just finished making the other GameCube exclusive that is a classic, Eternal Darkness. Really weird collaboration of different studios on a series that, up to this point, was really known as a PlayStation series. According to Silicon Knights founder Dennis Dyack, he was actually eating lunch in Nintendo's cafeteria when much-missed Nintendo president Satoru Iwata sauntered up to him and asked if he and his team would be interested in remaking the original Metal Gear for the GameCube. Nintendo and Konami had already been talking about trying to get Metal Gear onto GameCube, and Dennis Dyack had no idea. This wasn't Silicon Knights' pitch. They just showed up and said, hey, how about you guys make this?
Metal Gear Solid, of course, was huge at this point. This is just after Metal Gear Solid 2 Sons of Liberty came out on PlayStation 2, and the remake actually updated Metal Gear Solid 1 using Metal Gear Solid 2 as a blueprint. All of the features that were debuted in Metal Gear Solid 2 would be present in Metal Gear Solid 1. Not to mention the obvious graphical overhaul, but there are some other changes too.
Yeah, for better or worse, Twin Snakes overhauled everything from the original PlayStation Metal Gear Solid, even the things that, you know, sort of earned that original game its fans. One of the things they incorporated was first-person combat from Metal Gear Solid 2, and that was an odd thing to include because it made it easier to spot things in the environment, but it also made it way too easy to beat some of the game's distinctive boss fights. Freaking awesome confrontations like the missile versus chain gun fight with Vulcan Raven were turned into milquetoast roadblocks by the FPS view. Other changes, like being able to hide in lockers, didn't make such a severe impact on the fundamental play, but they didn't add a whole lot either. The biggest change, however, were the re-recorded voiceovers and wholly new cutscenes directed by Ryuhei Kitamura, who added sort of a weird Matrix flavor to the already super weird cutscenes from the original. Luddy, did the ninja really need to kick a piece of ceiling at Solid Snake's face?
I would say yes, because that is simply normal, completely standard ninja behavior. If you had done your ninja research, you would understand that. I think it's really interesting that the game's called Twin Snakes, not just because that refers to Liquid and Solid Snake, who are brothers in opposition in the storyline, but it's almost as if the original game and the remade content are, you know, opposing each other. Like you said, the first-person view didn't really work with the original design, but they didn't want to change the original design so dramatically to account for it. So it's really the original game and this weird mixture of the remake. It's a more fleshed-out stealth game, though, which I like about it. You have more options in how you approach certain patrol routes. But a lot of the additions, like hanging on the side of railings, is just kind of superfluous because the original game didn't really provide enemies that check that kind of stuff. They didn't really design the levels to let you take advantage or force you to do it, in fact. But it is still a very unique Metal Gear Solid game, available in only one place, which is the GameCube. And Twin Snakes does a really excellent job, I think, of highlighting the GameCube's graphical capabilities and how it was really positioned as a console that could, you know, be full of Nintendo flair, but also host mature-themed, high-profile games from other Japanese developers.
Yeah, I really do prefer the original graphical style of Metal Gear Solid on the PlayStation 1. That sort of low-poly look is almost impressionistic rather than the sort of hyper-realism that you see in Metal Gear Solid Twin Snakes and even today in Metal Gear Solid 5. You know, what you saw in that old one was far closer to the concept work of series artist Yoji Shinkawa. But Twin Snakes' look on the GameCube does fit into that Metal Gear graphical tradition of being at the bleeding edge of graphics technology, just like you see in Metal Gear Solid 5 with the Fox engine. Twin Snakes is the very best that a console could do in 2004. It's very much a showcase for what the GameCube could do in terms of sheer horsepower.
And if you're playing Metal Gear Solid 5, The Phantom Pain now, I think it's really fun to go back to the first major storyline in Metal Gear Solid, even though it takes place after Metal Gear Solid 5 consecutively. Don't worry about that yet if you're not familiar with the Metal Gear Solid storyline. But it's also just a great way to experience how they pioneered the very playful, provocative style of stealth that exists even into Metal Gear Solid 5. It's gone open world, but of course, the very basics like cardboard boxes and hiding in lockers and the way that you would crawl and avoid enemies, that is still so classic, so integral to Metal Gear Solid. And I think the Twin Snakes is a great way to play it if you are bothered by the presentation or the feel of the dated PlayStation original.
Even if you don't have a problem with the dated presentation or style of the PlayStation original, Twin Snakes is also exemplary of the sort of outra style of all of the GameCube's best exclusives. It was a weird-ass system full of weird-ass games, and Ryuha Kitamura's weird-ass new cutscenes in Twin Snakes might not be better or worse than the state originals, but they're absolutely of a piece with the sort of strangeness you see in GameCube games like PN03, Super Mario Sunshine, and next week's GameCube Prison subject, Yute Saito's Odama.
Oh yes, Odama, which is the feudal pinball game starring Edward James Olmos?
Yeah! Yeah, he's there. You tell him to, move troops around a field, to hit a giant pinball, and to pilot the Galactica directly into the atmosphere. Only part of what we just said is an accurate description of the game.
That exoskeleton